So, welcome to the Sharp Mind Show, episode 2. I'm Nate, the Fifth Future MD, your host. Make sure you shop at insercell.com, pick you up a cool inspirational t-shirt. And also, if you're interested in life coaching, make sure you click the links down below. Sign up for life coaching. Let's get your life right. Let's get your mind sharp. And on to the next one, right? All right, so episode 2. We're going to start off hot. Nestle, right? CEO, the second CEO in less than a year, ousted because of an affair with a subordinate. So Nestle CEO ousted because of an affair with a subordinate, right? So this is an example of a possible value stock, right? Right now you got a price of $74.89, a price to earnings of 18.71 with a dividend of $3.05, which is a 4% dividend, right? Now, the reason this one is so maybe a little bit more valuable than Cracker Barrel for sure, but Nestle is one of 3 companies that control the supply chain of chocolate, right? Matter of fact, when Mars went to Europe, they got their chocolate from Nestle, right? So that's really the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons that this could be like a nice little pick-me-up if you're a value investor, right? But you know, you've seen a string kind of thing of CEOs kind of getting caught having affairs, right? You know, the famous Coldplay concert, you know, Coldplay will ruin ruin a CEO's life or whatever. But you know, but this is kind of what we're looking for, right? In the market, right? We're looking for things, for stories where it's still a good company, right? Like none of the workers at the company have been changed other than the CEO, you know, and the CEO is not the one that does the work, right? So, you know, keep that in mind. But I think when I looked, Nestle was down a little bit already before this even happened, right? So year to date, you know, it was trading at 91, you know, in March, you know, and it was at, before this fell yesterday, literally this just happened yesterday, you know, it was basically sitting at 75. So it's really only down $1 because of this, right? So, but if this can, you know, if this trend continues and it keeps going down, it may end up being a buy. It's already, as far as PE goes, it's already like if you're a dividend investor, it's already a buy with a 4% dividend, you know, at this price level, right? But, you know, obviously this is not financial advice, you know, but if you can get an even lower price, if you can get this thing under 70, you know, you might be sitting pretty for a long time with a big fat 4% dividend guaranteed. You know, it's definitely something to look into, right? But this is kind of what we're looking for when we're talking about value investing, right? We're looking for companies that are good companies that may be down because of some kind of scandal or some kind of thing that's happening in the market, you know, that kind of thing, right? But you don't want to be, you know, where, you know, you're actually getting a bad company. So you got to make sure you do due diligence and make sure that Nestle actually is a good company still, right? Say these big giants are kind of getting interrupted by, you know, YouTubers that are making chocolate, right? That are making the healthier chocolate. When in fact, the YouTubers are still paying these bigger companies, Nestle, Mars, or Hershey, to have their chocolate, right? So Nestle really wanted to shut them down, or they could just cut the supply of chocolate off and their bar would go away, right? So keep that in mind. Just because a YouTuber has a winner doesn't mean that they have the supply chain. And that's really like why this could be something that's good, is because Nestle still has the supply chain, right? So starting off round one, pretty good here. Say talking about value investing, which is one of my favorite topics, right? That's how, I became financially free, was value investing. So, keep that moving, and hopefully they pick a good CEO and it'll pop back up for us, and we'll have a fat 4% dividend. And but like I say, not financial advice, right? All right, so next thing we got is that this is a Bloomberg story, okay? So Bloomberg came out with this. Trump may claim a national emergency. Trump may claim a national emergency when it comes to housing in the fall, okay? They say you're starting to talk about 2026 midterm elections and stuff like that. What's the biggest thing right now, is housing, right? Now, what's the idea behind doing something like this, right? The idea behind doing something like this is that you basically would have a one-size-fits-all code system for these local municipalities and these places that are slowing the process down. Basically, to have regulations that slow the process down when it comes to having houses being built or homes being built, right? Because we basically had a huge shortage of housing, and that's why housing prices are so high. If you have a high demand and low supply, then you're going to have high prices. Now, most people that already own a home are kind of most people that own a home already are kind of hey, don't do this because you're going to make the price of our home go down. So that's kind of the selfish, if you're playing Monopoly, right? One of the biggest skills in Monopoly is to have a piece of every section of the board so that other people can't have a monopoly, right? Basically, you prevent people from owning homes, right? And so, if you're a homeowner right now, especially, a rich one, you may see this as a very bad thing, right? Because the price of your housing is going to go down. And, you already are deep into a mortgage, you've already bought the home at a certain price. And if that price level goes down, obviously you're upside down in your mortgage, right? But I think something like this probably needs to happen. Like I say, you can't have, surges of homelessness, people that are working regular jobs and right now in my area, you have an average home. The average sale price for a house in my area right now is $425,000. At the current interest rate, that means that a family would have to make $115,000 a year to be able to qualify for those mortgages, right? And the average household income in this area is $66,000 on a two-person income in my area, right? So, that means we have this huge gap between what normal workers could afford and, what the actual reality is, right? So you want it to be, you maybe don't want to bring it down, so say the average is 66,000. If you brought it down where you had to make 80,000 to be able to afford a home, then that's probably a reasonable goal. But if you're trying to make it where it's $40,000 to be reformed, where everybody can afford a home, that's obviously not going to work, right? So, but this is definitely a MAGA playbook. This is definitely like a Republican playbook. You want to increase supply so that the price of things go down. You want to decrease regulations so that you have more supply, right? You keep prices low and you keep competition high. All right, so that's story number 2 of the day. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Is this an overstep of, federal power? Probably. But if you claim a national emergency on it, which is kind of what his playbook has been, claim a national emergency on it and try to fix it, without the help of Congress, which is why people are calling him a dictator, fascist, whatever, because that's what he's having to do, because Congress is too slow for him, right? He's only got 4 years and he can't run again. We probably can run again, but we're not getting into that right now. But so even something else that that Trump has done, right? And but the government announced it's converting Intel's CHIPS Act grant into equity stake into Intel, right? So Intel's been down for a while, right? They have fallen behind NVIDIA and AMD on chips, right, that are used for AI. So obviously the government tried to give them, the government under Biden tried to give them a grant that would, try to give them a little help catching up when it comes to these chips, right? And so instead of just giving them the grant and saying, okay, you can have the grant and do whatever you want to with it, we're going to take, 9% of your company and, probably have a board seat, and decision-making power, to kind of, get this company actually moving in the right direction, to make sure it's not like we're just giving you this money and you're just blowing it and the company still goes bankrupt anyway, right? If you give money from the American people for something, you definitely should do the best you can to guarantee success with it. But this is kind of going into more socialist policy, more fascist policy, whatever you want to call it. But if the government's taking percentage stakes in private companies, that's kind of moving towards more communism, in my opinion, than anything else, right? So the government taking a stake in Intel is definitely communist principles. It's with the government coming in and taking over a company and the company just being part of the government, obviously that's not good. And yeah, hopefully we sell this stake pretty quickly once Intel figures it out, right? But us as a regular investor, we see Intel being propped up by the government. It may be a good time to say, we see Intel propped up by the government. It may be a good time to say, okay, well, let's see, is this a value investment that we can look at, right? So Intel's sitting at $24.35, losing money at $4.77 a share. Let's see, and PE ratio is obviously negative, right? So, and as far as the year to date, it's got a high 27 and a low of 20, and before this announcement it was sitting at 19. So it's up about it's up about $5 currently on the way. Yeah, say it's up about $5 since this announcement, right? So obviously investors are thinking the same thing I am, where okay, well, this might be a value investment that'll double up, go back to being profitable, compete, and get as high. It could get as high, up as NVIDIA, because Intel used to dominate this market like NVIDIA is dominating the market now, and so, but we'll see, right? Say the biggest thing about this one is that the government's kind of owning Intel, and whether that's morally right for the democratic republic to own portions of companies like I say, they've done it in the past, but you're pushing more towards communism when you're doing stuff like this, right? But when you're talking about national security, people make exceptions for stuff like that, right? So we'll see. All right. So, and lastly, today, obviously, the Bill Belichick era did not start out as good as the Carolina fans would hope, with UNC versus TCU getting the blowout win 48-14. Now, we were sitting there, 14-7 at halftime, right? And thinking, okay, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. We can make, because Bill Belichick's great at making adjustments, right? That's like the whole key to his whole, Super Bowl era thing, is that they make adjustments at halftime, and all of a sudden you come back and you're dominating the person in the second half. But clearly TCU was just a lot better team last night, with a 48-14 win. The starting quarterback obviously went out for Carolina, but the backup quarterback looks like, based on stats, looks like he played better than the starting quarterback, but it may have been cleanup time when he was getting that kind of stuff. Obviously, if you only score 7 points and the other team scores, 30-something points, then, the other team's got the ball more. They got time of possession. So that kind of thing. Obviously, they got a pick six in the first half, but Bill Belichick starts out 0-1, and clearly it's not going to be this big 10-win season probably that the Carolina hopeful were hoping for. Like I say, when you come in and you're a Super Bowl champion coach, you kind of have high expectations, and hopefully the Carolina fans can, overcome this future losing season here, because TCU's not ranked, right? Like, it's not like they're in the top 25, and getting a blowout like this is definitely not what was expected. So, but all right, this has been the Sharp Mind Show episode 2, and I hope you have enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something. We talked, this was a lot more about investments today. That's kind of where the headlines led us, right? But this is kind of how the show's kind of going to go. Like I say, we're sitting here to sharpen our minds, right? More than anything, so you see a lot of podcasts where you're really just talking about stuff that just does not matter. Like, they're debating stupid stuff, that kind of thing. But the truth and the reality is, the Sharp Mind Show is going to sharpen your mind. You're going to figure out what a value investment is. You're going to figure out, how does certain news articles affect you as a local person. Like, that's what the Sharp Mind is going to show, right? Like, I'm going to say, okay, well, is this communism? Is this fascism? Like, what is this actual thing? And it's not going to be like you're taking a side on one thing or the other, but you're definitely going to see, like, what are they actually really doing here, right, with something like this, right? And obviously, I love sports, so I'm going to talk about sports, but a little bit, and hopefully not every day, but, sports will be in there. But I hope you've enjoyed the Sharp Mind Show episode 2. This show is brought to you by Intercell.com. Make sure you go pick you up a cool inspirational t-shirt at Intercell.com. And obviously, I'm a life coach. So if you're looking to set up your life, or you can figure out what value investments to go into, or you figure out how stuff like this, news stories affect your life, and how you can take advantage of stuff like this, hit me up in the DM for life coaching, and let's get you started. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.